You work out, eat your greens, and meet your deadlines, so why does your brain still slow to a crawl every afternoon? In 2025, surveys show most adults who sleep poorly report real drops in focus and output at work, even when they're otherwise doing everything right. We'll look at the everyday habits quietly sabotaging your sleep, including a device in your bedroom that researchers say can throw off your sleep hormone timing. By the end, you'll have one simple change to test tonight. Quick, what time did you wake up today? Drop it in the comments. The hidden productivity leak you can't out-hustle. In 2025, updated estimates put the cost of poor sleep to the U.S. economy at roughly $136.4 billion per year in lost productivity and related impacts. That figure isn't just an abstract national statistic. It reflects a measurable daily drop in focus, decision-making speed, and quality of output for both teams and individuals. Surveys back this up. Around 70% of adults who say they don't get healthy sleep also report that it negatively affects their work performance. If you've ever felt on, but not sharp, this section is why. Scaled down to a single office, it looks a lot simpler. Someone spends 5 minutes rereading the same email because they can't quite process it. Multiply that slow drift in attention across a day, and the volume and quality of work start to shrink, even when the hours at the desk stay the same. You've probably seen, or been, that person staying late to finish just one more slide before tomorrow's presentation. It seems like the smart move in the moment. The trap is that even if you feel awake the next day, thanks to caffeine or adrenaline, your brain is processing new information more slowly, and recall takes more effort. That's the hidden drag. Speed, accuracy, and mental flexibility all run below your potential without you noticing right away. The decline doesn't require outright sleep deprivation. Shortening your rest by as little as 60 to 90 minutes night after night produces similar drops in working memory, attention, and decision-making. And once attention slips, ripple effects follow. Emails get skimmed instead of read, leading to small errors. Decisions turn reactive instead of strategic because weighing options feels too taxing. Meetings drift, projects stall, and the overall pace of meaningful progress slows. This pattern isn't just about willpower or motivation. Executive function, the set of cognitive processes that control focus, working memory, and self-regulation, has limits that aren't negotiable. With insufficient rest, those resources deplete. It's like running important software on outdated hardware. The commands still work, but each one takes longer and the system freezes more often. Tasks fragment and interruptions creep in. Output sags, not because you're working less, but because you're working at reduced capacity. The effect extends beyond desk work. In fields where precision and timing matter, surgery, manufacturing, transport, coaching, fatigue interacts with physical coordination. Reaction times slow. Awareness narrows. Mistakes happen that wouldn't occur in a fully rested state, and fixing them eats further into valuable work time. These aren't isolated flukes. They're predictable outcomes of running on depleted cognitive and physical reserves. Framing sleep as a personal lifestyle choice misses this connection. The brain's overnight maintenance is not a luxury. It's the foundation for cognitive speed, flexible thinking, emotional control, and accurate recall. While you sleep, neurons clear metabolic waste, and memory systems consolidate and organize new information. Skip or fragment that process, and you're starting the day with a system that's still halfway through its reset cycle. Workplace culture has long rewarded early arrivals and late departures as proof of commitment. But that measures visible hours, not the quality of what's produced in those hours. An exhausted employee might log 10 hours and produce 6 hours worth of clear, accurate work, while a rested colleague gets more done in less time. Spread that difference across teams and quarters, and the cumulative effect explains why the economic loss figure is so large. Consider a founder running a small startup. They troubleshoot a client problem past midnight, then rise early for an investor call. Adrenaline carries them through the start, but mid-pitch, their usual precision fades. They pause too long, stumble over a question they could normally answer without hesitation, and lose the thread on a key point. Nothing about their expertise changed overnight, but fatigue slowed retrieval and dulled mental agility. Opportunities slip in moments like these, even if no one labels them as sleep costs. That's the essence of this productivity leak. It's less about visible fatigue and more about a consistent, subtle gap between what you could do at full capacity and what you actually manage on inadequate rest. That gap compounds over weeks and months until it shapes both your output and the trajectory of your work without you realizing it while you're in it. Understanding this shifts sleep from being time away from work to the core system that allows the work to happen at its best. Sustained attention, adaptive thinking, and sound judgment are tied directly to that overnight recalibration. It's not just about feeling energized, it's about protecting the brain functions that decide whether your hours tomorrow move you forward or keep you stuck in loops. Once you recognize the cost of that gap, the question becomes how to close it. And that starts with rethinking some of the most common sleep advice you've been told for years. Why the 8-hour rule might be wrecking your sleep. Most of us have grown up hearing the same formula: aim for 8 hours a night. It sounds like a clear benchmark, something you can plug into your schedule and hit on the dot. But sleep isn't as simple as setting a bedtime based solely on a target number, and for some people, trying to force that schedule can actually make sleep harder to come by. Experts point out that while consistency matters, especially for your wake-up time, a fixed, lights out in the absence of real sleepiness can backfire. The problem often starts when you head to bed because the clock tells you to, not because your body is ready to switch into sleep mode. You lie there, fully awake, watching time slip away and wondering why your brain won't comply. That frustration begins to stick, and before long, your body learns to associate bedtime with struggling to sleep rather than drifting off. This bedtime pressure has been shown to raise arousal levels, mentally and physically, which makes sleep even less likely. Sleep timing isn't a simple on-demand switch because it's shaped by circadian rhythms, internal patterns influenced by light exposure, activity levels, and even when you eat. If you try to fall asleep while your system is still in its alert phase, you're working against biology. The same issue can appear in reverse. If you're an early riser but try to artificially delay bedtime just to complete an 8-hour block from wake time, you might find yourself dozing off in the living room, only to become more alert once you move to bed, extending the time it takes to fall asleep. Over many nights, this mismatch erodes efficiency, how much of your time in bed you actually spend sleeping. Research from 2025 reinforces that there's no single blueprint for everyone. While the general recommendation for adults is 7-9 hours of nightly sleep, the exact timing and duration that leaves someone most restored varies widely. Two people can get the same total hours yet differ in when their most restorative sleep occurs. Factors like genetics, hormone patterns, and recent sleep history shape this optimal window. For some, it's closer to the cultural default. For others, it drifts earlier or later, sometimes even shifting with the seasons. The 8-hour benchmark itself had more to do with history than physiology. It was promoted during 19th century labor reforms as part of a balanced day, not drawn from medical evidence about human sleep cycles. But repeated over generations, it hardened into what sounds like a rule. The problem isn't the habit of aiming for enough rest. It's interpreting that number as a one-size-fits-all law that overrides your body's natural signals. Chasing an exact number can also cause unhelpful shifts to your internal clock. If you stay up unusually late and then sleep in to make up lost time, you can nudge your circadian rhythm forward, making it harder to sleep on time the following night. Ironically, this often leaves people feeling worse across the week, even as they log what appears to be enough total sleep. Many sleep specialists suggest that in these situations, it's better to keep your usual wake time and let your body catch up gradually, rather than resetting your schedule with big swings. Another finding from recent studies relates to sleep efficiency. People who rigidly chase a target number often reduce their efficiency, ending up with long awake periods in bed that fragment the night cycles. Someone sleeping 6.5 hours of deep, consolidated rest can function better than someone in bed for 8.5 restless, broken hours. The architecture of sleep matters. Uninterrupted cycles allow for deeper restorative stages and the mental and physical recovery that comes with them. A more useful approach is to identify your own optimal window, when drowsiness starts to arise naturally and when your body wakes most easily without intervention. This often emerges when you maintain a consistent wake time and create a wind-down buffer before bed that limits bright lights, stressful thinking, and stimulating activity. If sleepiness hasn't set in by a planned bedtime, pushing yourself to lie down often fuels unnecessary tension. For many, allowing readiness to drive bedtime within a steady overall framework works better than aiming for a rigid target hour. The anxiety around getting enough is a key piece here. Lying in bed calculating how little time remains before morning, trying to will yourself into sleep, tends to raise nervous system activation, the exact opposite of what sleep requires. Experts like Stephanie Ramasiewski note that this kind of performance pressure can turn short-lived trouble sleeping into longer-term insomnia. When the focus shifts from hitting a number to catching your personal readiness cues, that pressure starts to ease. If you want a low-effort way to test this, try a 2-week experiment. Wake up at the same time every day, but don't go to bed until you notice clear signs of sleepiness, slowed thinking, waning interest in screens or conversation, heavier eyelids. Track not just how long you sleep, but how alert and clear-headed you feel the next day. By the end, you may find your bedtime naturally shifting into a pattern that's both more efficient and more restorative. Widening the definition of enough sleep to account for individual differences isn't a license to cut corners. It's a reminder that the quality and timing of your rest matter as much as the total hours. You create better conditions for restorative sleep when you align with your own biology rather than measuring yourself against a fixed number from outside your experience. With this shift, sleep becomes less about meeting a nightly quota and more about supporting the brain and body in the way they operate best. And once you've adjusted your thinking about how much you actually need, it becomes easier to address the next common source of confusion: the belief that lost sleep can be perfectly paid back in the days that follow. Understanding sleep debt without losing your mind. Sleep debt gets talked about like it's a straightforward equation. Miss a few hours one night, tack them back on the next, and you're square. It's a neat idea, but it doesn't match how your body actually responds to lost rest. Thinking about it purely in hours creates either a false sense of control, because you believe you can erase the damage overnight, or unnecessary anxiety, because you assume you're stuck in deficit until you pay it off. In reality, recovery is less about chasing totals, and more about how your sleep patterns rebalance over time. The ledger view is tempting because it feels measurable, and we like things we can measure. Imagine it as a cartoon debt collector at your door with a clipboard. You owe 3 hours from Tuesday. You scramble to settle it with a long lie-in or an oversized nap. In that picture, you're clear the moment you give back the missing hours. But research shows the brain isn't adding up timestamps like that. Instead, it reprioritizes what you get in your next sleep cycle, pushing more time into slow-wave stages after heavy physical use, or into REM when the prior day was mentally intense. That means recovery spreads across several nights, because those stages need to be rebuilt in sequence. You can't simply compress them into one extra-long stretch. That's why an occasional sleep-in after a short night doesn't always leave you feeling completely reset. You might boost one component, more deep sleep, for example, but you won't reconstruct a full sequence of cycles from the night you lost. And if that lie-in pushes your body clock later, you risk making the next night's sleep harder to initiate, especially if you've anchored your wake-up time loosely. Over time, this keeps your rhythms unstable, forcing you into the same deficit and recovery loop. A more useful frame is to treat lost sleep as a temporary disruption in your system's rhythm, not a running tab of minutes. The priority, then, is to restore stability so the brain can do its repair work efficiently over several days. Research-backed recovery strategies, like those used in behavioral sleep therapy, focus first on a consistent wake time. If you hold that steady for 2 to 3 days after a short night, and keep your sleep window realistic, your brain can redistribute the stages it needs and bring you back to baseline faster than any single binge sleep will. This is a better long-term investment in quality than swinging between extremes. That consistency also blunts the mood and focus dips that follow poor sleep. While your perception of impairment is partly shaped by how you expect to feel, objective measures like attention span and working memory really do take a hit after even modest loss. The upside is that these functions start to rebound within a couple of stable nights, even if the first day after poor sleep feels slower. This matters because believing you're ruined until you've done some imagined catch-up can be self-fulfilling. You pace yourself lower, avoid hard work, and reinforce the sense of deficit. On low sleep mornings, a simple habit shift can keep you productive without stalling recovery. Assign lighter or more procedural tasks early when you're less sharp, and push high focus or creative work to a window where you know you typically peak. Avoid lying in bed awake hoping to grab a bit more after your alarm. Get up at your planned time. Each choice reinforces the pattern your body clock relies on to kickstart repair. It's also worth noting how quickly this approach works when you hold the line. In many cases, 2 to 3 nights on schedule are enough to neutralize the main functional effects of a single short night. That's because your cycles stay intact, building on the cues your body already uses to release sleep hormones on time. Picture it as getting your maintenance timetable back in order after skipping a service, rather than trying to cram multiple skipped services into one day. Letting go of the hour-counting mindset removes another barrier to better rest: stress at bedtime. Few things delay sleep more reliably than watching the clock and doing mental math about how little time you have left. Shifting the internal goal from catch up to stay on course means you're supporting recovery without the added mental load of precision tracking. One solid week of that routine will do more for your energy and output than any single extra long night wedged into an erratic schedule. The take-home here is straightforward. Your body doesn't demand perfect symmetry between hours lost and hours gained. It looks for the chance to resume its best rhythm. When you give it that, through steady wake times, a realistic window for sleep onset, and small adjustments to workload on low sleep days, it recovers in ways that actually matter for how you function. That's how you chip away at sleep debt without letting it dominate your calendar or playbook. Of course, locking in timing is one part of the equation. The other is what happens inside that sleep window, and here, your environment plays a bigger role than most people realize. Many routines that feel relaxing before bed can quietly work against the very rhythm you're trying to protect. The tech saboteurs in your bedroom. Step into most bedrooms today and they're far more than sleeping spaces. They've become workstations, entertainment hubs, charging depots, and digital hangouts. The same bed where you're meant to rest might also be where you answer a client email, stream a series, scroll news updates, or catch up on group chats. Over time, those patterns teach your brain to associate the room with alertness and action rather than the start of rest. The 2025 research points to a 3-part problem. First, bright screen light, especially in the blue spectrum, suppresses melatonin, the hormone that cues your body to prepare for sleep, shifting your internal clock later. Second, notifications and alerts spark what's called cognitive activation, a jump in mental alertness that can linger well past the moment you check them. Third, there's mental residue, the carryover of thoughts and feelings from whatever you were just doing, from troubleshooting a work issue to reacting to a tense news story. Together, these can delay the body's transition into deeper sleep stages and lengthen the time it takes to drift off. This is why night mode alone isn't enough. Filters that cut blue light do help align melatonin release with your bedtime, but they can't stop the mental lift that comes from engaging content or emotionally charged interactions. To reduce both parts of the problem, you need light control and content control. Physical factors can play a smaller but still relevant role. Staying propped up to watch or type holds your body in a more wakeful posture, and the heat from multiple devices can subtly raise the temperature under the covers. Both can make it harder for your core temperature to drop, which is one of the body's natural cues for sleep onset. The drift into these habits often feels harmless. The quick video as a wind down, the one last message before lights out. The challenge is that every repetition strengthens the link between bed and mental activity. Weakening that association, even slightly, can have a measurable impact on how quickly and deeply you sleep. The latest guidance doesn't demand a total tech ban in bedrooms, though for some, that works, but instead focuses on small, consistent limits. One evidence-backed approach is to avoid bright screens for the last 60-90 minutes before sleep, or, for a deeper reset, 2-3 hours. Many people find it easier to frame this as a short experiment rather than a permanent rule. A 1-week trial of charging your phone outside the bedroom can make it easier to resist late-night checks. And keeping notifications off after a set time removes one of the most frequent alertness triggers. If removing devices entirely feels unrealistic, you can still change the type and tone of what you engage with in the evening. Low-demand activities, like scrolling a recipe app, rewatching a light, familiar program, or listening to a slow-paced podcast, are less likely to cause lingering mental activation than deep work tasks or emotionally charged discussions. The key is to choose things that don't require problem-solving or provoke a strong reaction. Simple environmental cues can reinforce this shift. Dim the lights and lower background noise in the hour before bed to help your environment match the state you want to reach. These changes act as consistent signals to your brain that the day is winding down. One of the most doable tactics from the research is setting a last checkpoint. About 20-30 minutes before your intended sleep window, go through any final messages or alerts you feel you need to address, then switch your phone to Do Not Disturb, place it on a charging station outside the room, and avoid reopening anything that could start a new train of thought. This creates a buffer between the day's inputs and the moment you try to sleep, giving your body and mind time to downshift. Not all tech use in the bedroom is inherently harmful. Tools like white noise machines, guided meditations, or smart lights that dim gradually can actually support the wind-down process. The difference is that these uses are geared toward reducing stimulation, not prolonging it. When used intentionally in this way, technology can become part of the sleep routine rather than a barrier to it. By recognizing that the delays to sleep come from both physical light effects and the mental carryover of your last activities, it becomes clearer how to adjust. It's less about cutting out comfort or convenience and more about filtering out the kinds of engagement that keep you switched on. Making even small changes to how and when you use devices in the evening can shorten the time it takes to fall asleep and improve the depth of sleep once you're there. And while technology is one of the most common late-night disruptors, it's not the only everyday habit that can quietly push your sleep schedule later than you planned. Some of them don't look like sleep habits at all. In fact, one of the most dependable ways people delay their body's readiness for rest starts much earlier in the day, often without a second thought. Caffeine timing, your secret sleep ally or silent productivity killer. One of the most common patterns that undermines sleep doesn't happen at night. It starts when you pour that extra cup of coffee hours earlier. For many people, reaching for caffeine in the afternoon feels like a harmless fix for drifting focus. You're mid-task, feeling the lull, and it's second nature to refill the mug. The immediate boost can be real, but the timing can quietly interfere with how well you sleep and how sharp you feel the next day. The effects often outlast the buzz you notice, and for some, they linger far longer than expected. Recent findings in 2025 have refined our understanding of caffeine's half-life, the time needed for the body to eliminate half of it from the bloodstream. For most adults, it averages between 4 and 6 hours, but individual differences can double or shorten that window. Genetics play a big role. People with slower variants of the liver enzyme that breaks caffeine down can still have measurable levels in their system close to midnight after an afternoon espresso. The Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine has shown that even a single 400 mg dose taken 6 hours before bed can significantly disrupt sleep architecture, reducing deep and restorative stages. For faster metabolizers, the clearance is quicker, but not quick enough to avoid all effects on sleep quality later that night. It's a common mistake to assume falling asleep means caffeine has done no harm. What research shows is that you may still enter lighter stages of sleep more often and spend less time in slow-wave phases, the deep stage where the body carries out physical repair and the brain strengthens memory. You might close your eyes and sleep straight through, but wake up less refreshed, with slower thinking, weaker recall, or muted motivation. People often chalk this up to stress or workload, never linking it to the last latte of the day. This is why you can easily meet your target sleep hours and still feel a step behind. Caffeine doesn't just make falling asleep harder, it subtly reshapes the night's structure so that more of it is spent in less restorative stages. That means more tiny awakenings you won't remember and less consolidated deep rest. Over weeks, you're carrying a lower baseline of recovery, which can lead to leaning on caffeine even more to mask the deficit. A loop that's easy to miss because the stimulating effect feels helpful in the moment. The next day, the consequences hit areas you may not immediately link to sleep. Beyond physical tiredness, reaction speed can drop, working memory can falter, and tasks you normally breeze through require more concentration. You may reread messages before replying, lose your place mid-process, or find decisions take longer. Caffeine might feel like it's smoothing these edges, but when poorly timed, it's also part of what dulled them in the first place. How long caffeine lingers isn't just about genetics. Age can slow your clearance rate, and hormonal changes, including those in pregnancy, can amplify and extend its effects. Certain medications compete with caffeine for the same metabolic pathways, lengthening its half-life even in people who usually process it quickly. This means a timing habit that felt fine in your 20s might quietly erode your sleep in later decades without you realizing the shift. Daily users sometimes think tolerance protects them from these effects. While regular caffeine use can blunt the jittery feeling of stimulation, it doesn't guarantee protection from the impact on sleep stages. You may stop noticing a buzz from late-day coffee, but nighttime brain activity can still show reduced deep and REM sleep, regardless of whether you feel wired. If you want to keep your productivity high without cutting caffeine entirely, the key is finding your personal cutoff. A common research-based place to start is to avoid caffeine in the 6 hours leading up to bedtime, since disruption has been observed even at that gap. Treat this as a starting point for your own testing. Shift your last coffee or tea earlier for a week and track how quickly you fall asleep, how often you wake, and how rested you feel in the morning. If you still notice impacts, move it back by another hour and repeat for 7 to 10 days. Patterns often become clear once you hold timing steady for long enough. Placing caffeine earlier in the day can turn it into an asset instead of a liability. Using it in the morning, particularly ahead of a natural mid-morning dip in alertness, lets you enjoy the performance boost without it cutting into slow wave and REM stages at night. This makes it possible to use caffeine tactically for moments that demand extra focus, rather than relying on it to cover for accumulated fatigue you could have prevented. Timing also matters if naps are part of your routine. Caffeine too close to an afternoon nap can limit its restorative depth, just as a late nap can delay nighttime sleep. Adjusting both together, moving caffeine earlier and keeping naps brief and before mid-afternoon, can break cycles of late-day stimulation and delayed bedtime. For those concerned that moving the last dose earlier will mean slogging through late-day energy drops, consider that part of the slump may be leftover from disrupted sleep the night before. After a few days of earlier caffeine, many find the afternoon feels smoother without increasing total intake. Supporting the shift with light exposure, movement, and steady hydration can also help fill the gap without adding more stimulants. Hidden sources can extend caffeine's reach into your evening without you realizing it. Tea, sodas, chocolate, energy drinks, and pre-workout supplements all contribute, and even modest amounts late in the day can push back your body's readiness for deep sleep. An easy experiment is to log every source of caffeine for 3 to 5 days, including quantities and times, and compare it to your sleep timing and quality. Many people notice that moving or reducing just one of these hidden sources makes an immediate difference. Thinking of caffeine as a precision tool reframes its role. It's less effective as a constant prop and more useful when aligned with your natural rhythm, so you get the daytime boost without the nighttime penalty. Protecting sleep quality keeps reaction time sharp, memory reliable, and focus sustained, making it less likely you'll need to chase those effects again the next afternoon. The most valuable takeaway is that caffeine's power comes from strategic use, not constant exposure. In practice, this can be as small as finishing your last cup an hour earlier each week until you find the timing that gives you clear mornings and easier nights. Done consistently, you'll maintain the benefits without undermining the overnight recovery that fuels them, and you'll reduce your reliance on it to stay productive. Of course, even the best-timed caffeine won't rescue you if the rest of your sleep routine is unstable. One of the most overlooked disruptors comes not from what you drink, but from how irregular your daily schedule is. And for many people, recent changes to where and how they work have made that instability the default. Why your work-from-home freedom is destroying your sleep rhythm. One of the biggest draws of remote or hybrid work is that you can bend your day to fit your needs. You might start later after a late night, swap an early meeting for mid-morning, or shift hours to fit in errands or exercise. It feels like freedom. But your circadian system prefers reliability. Small day-to-day shifts compound into a later clock. That biological timing runs best when its cues are consistent, and one of the most powerful cues you control is when you wake up. Your wake time acts like a daily reset button. The moment you open your eyes and see light, your brain starts the next cycle, hormones adjust, alertness builds, and clocks in your organs and tissues sync up. If that wake time changes from one day to the next, the system has to resync, and that doesn't happen instantly. Even shifts of 45 minutes can slide your internal schedule later. That creates a mismatch between when your body is ready to perform and when work requires focus. With no fixed start time, it's tempting to let mornings drift based on how you feel. After staying up late, you give yourself extra sleep. On a quiet morning, you linger in bed, but each choice pushes your clock later, which delays the signal for sleep the following night. Over several days, you can find yourself alert well past bedtime and slow to wake, even if you're spending plenty of time in bed. Studies of remote and hybrid workers in 2025 found that people whose wake times fluctuated by more than an hour across the week had slower reaction times and more trouble sustaining focus on demanding tasks compared to those with consistent wake times. The total amount of sleep didn't always differ, but the irregularity left them feeling less rested. It's the timing that matters. When internal rhythms fall out of sync with daily demands, performance dips. A stable wake time links closely to other circadian anchors. In an office environment, fixed commutes, lunch breaks, and end-of-day departures create repeating signals about when to be alert and when to wind down. At home, these cues can disappear. One day you might still be in pajamas at 10 a.m., another you're at a cafe by 9. Without those consistent signals, it's easier to slide into later work sessions, evening screen use, and unplanned bedtimes that push your rhythm even further. You can replace those missing signals by creating microcues at home. Think of 3 consistent anchors that happen in the same order every day: wake time, exposure to bright morning light, and your first meal. That combination mimics the office's built-in cues, but lets you control the environment. Fixed wake time fires the starting gun for your clock, morning light strengthens it, and a consistent breakfast time reinforces your body's readiness to be active. Bright light is especially important. Research from the University of Surrey and Harvard shows that 20 to 30 minutes of outdoor light in the first hour after waking can help lock your circadian rhythm in place. Indoor light, even in a well-lit home office, is far dimmer than sunlight. If going outside isn't possible, sitting near a window or using a bright light lamp can approximate the effect and still strengthen the signal. Pairing light with movement, like walking to get coffee or stretching by an open window, can boost alertness in the morning and make it easier to fall asleep at night. This doesn't mean you need to enforce a rigid bedtime to benefit. The research found that even when bedtimes varied, a fixed wake time kept overall alertness steadier. On nights when you get less sleep, you'll naturally feel ready for bed earlier the following night, pulling your schedule back on track. This approach also protects you from the common trap of sleeping in to catch up, which can shift your rhythm later and perpetuate the cycle. If your work hours vary widely, choose the earliest wake time you realistically need in a typical week and make that your daily standard. On mornings with a later start, use the extra time for low-pressure activities, reading, easy planning, light exercise, rather than drifting back to sleep. This preserves your anchor while still leaving room for the flexibility that remote work offers in other parts of the day. At first, the transition can feel rough if you're used to letting wake time slide. The first few days may bring heavier mornings, but as your clock stabilizes, waking becomes easier and energy distribution across the day evens out. You may notice fewer afternoon dips and less need for late-day caffeine or snacks to keep going. Morning light will speed this adjustment, especially if you make it a non-negotiable pairing with your wake time. Think of that wake time as you would a hard start meeting you can't reschedule. It's fixed. By removing the daily decision of, should I get up now? You avoid the drift that small delays create over time. Consistency here gives your body regular touch points to align its internal timing, so those biological signals for alertness and rest work for you instead of against you. One simple way to test the impact is to run a 1-week experiment. Keep your wake time identical every day, include 20-30 minutes of bright morning light within the first hour, and set your first meal at roughly the same time. During the week, note how alert you feel mid-morning and mid-afternoon, and whether you notice any change in evening sleepiness. Many people find that by the end of the week, focus improves and energy swings drop without changing total sleep time. The goal isn't to eliminate flexibility, but to protect the one cue that shapes the rest. With a set wake time, you can still shift meetings, work locations, and even your bedtime when needed without your performance paying the price. That fixed point steadies your rhythm so occasional changes don't pull you too far off course. It's a low-effort adjustment with outsized returns in how well you think and feel through the day. Once your wake time is consistent, the next step is making sure the time you spend in bed actually works for you. That's where many people get sidetracked. Online, you'll see endless quick fixes and guaranteed tricks to fall asleep faster, but most of them miss the deeper change that actually shortens the time it takes to drift off. Falling asleep faster without the weird hacks. Some evenings, the problem isn't that you don't want to sleep, it's that the moment you switch off the light, your mind stays switched on. That's when the search for something quick and certain kicks in. Online, you'll see fall asleep instantly tricks everywhere. Some are endlessly complicated, others involve breathing patterns or sound cues, and sometimes they work for a night or two. There's nothing wrong with that. Novelty can distract you just enough to relax in the short term. But sleep physiologists like Stephanie Ramasiewski point out that these quick wins often wear off. Without matching how your body's sleep systems actually work, the effect fades, and you're back at the start. What lasts is building reliable, repeatable cues that your brain comes to link with winding down. 4 simple, testable habits cover most of the ground you actually need. The first is a short, repeatable wind-down routine. This doesn't have to be elaborate. 20 to 30 minutes is enough if you do it the same way, in the same order, every night. Dimming the lights, putting a few things away, changing into sleep clothes, and then reading something low stakes is enough for most. The point isn't complexity, it's conditioning. Over time, starting the first step of that sequence signals to your body that the day is winding down, in the same way walking into a familiar kitchen can make you feel hungry even before there's food. This conditioning makes the transition to sleep smoother because your body starts it before you even get into bed. Second, reduce bright or cool-toned light in the hour before bed. Light tells your brain it's still daytime, delaying the rise of melatonin. You don't need total darkness, but softer, warmer light works in your favor. Switch from overheads to lamps, turn screen brightness down, and keep phones or tablets far enough from your eyes that they stop flooding you with the most alerting wavelengths. Harvard research and Sleep Foundation guidance back this up. Cutting light intensity and shifting its tone helps your body's natural nighttime signal work as it should. Third, use temperature to your advantage. As night approaches, your core temperature naturally drops, signaling readiness for sleep. Helping this process along can shorten the time it takes to drift off. One simple way is to take a warm shower about half an hour before bed. The warmth pulls blood toward the surface, and when you step out, the quick cooling deepens your body's time to sleep signal. Keeping your bedroom slightly cooler, just a degree or two below your daytime preference, reinforces this effect. The fourth habit is about supplements. Short-term use of melatonin tablets or herbal sleep aids can help in specific cases, like shifting time zones. But make them the exception, not the rule. Regular use builds a sense of dependence, and their effects in healthy sleepers are limited. Relying on them nightly can also create tension if you run out or forget. Conditioning your body through cues and timing, rather than chemistry, leaves you with a system that works even without a pill or tea. A core principle behind all of this is not getting into bed until you're actually sleepy. This isn't about willpower. It's a CBTI-backed approach that avoids pairing your bed with the frustration of staring at the ceiling. Your brain works by association, and if being in bed often means being awake and stressed, it learns that pattern. Instead, stay up until you notice your own readiness cues: heavier eyelids, slower thinking, and less interest in what you're doing. If you're not there yet, use the time for something low demand and familiar, stretching, light music, or flipping through a book you've already read, until those cues appear. Then head to bed, and the odds of quick, frustration-free sleep are far higher. Recognizing the sleep window makes this easier. Your body has a period each night when everything aligns, melatonin is up, core temperature is dropping, and your mind is less engaged. Catching that window is when sleep tends to come fastest. Miss it by pushing on with stimulating activities, and you can push your onset back by an hour or more. This is why locking in that wind-down sequence matters. It helps you hit that readiness point consistently. What you avoid in that last hour counts as much as what you include. Activities that pull you into goal-focused problem-solving, strong emotions, or new information can leave mental residue, the thoughts and feelings your brain keeps working through after the lights go out. Even if the device is off, the mind stays active. Low-demand activities keep you gently engaged without laying down more to process. This light engagement blocks rumination without introducing extra stimulation. Your surroundings matter too. Anything in view that reminds you of unfinished work or chores can nudge your brain back into planning mode. Remove those prompts, close laptops, clear the chair piled with clothes, turn clocks away. If you wake in the night and see the time, you're more likely to start calculating how much sleep is left, which pulls you out of rest mode. A neutral, uncluttered sleep space reduces these triggers. To see how conditioning works for yourself, try a short experiment. For the next 5 nights, follow the same 20-30 minute wind-down sequence before bed. Keep the lighting soft, add the warm shower if you can, and only get into bed when your readiness cues are clear. Rate how quickly you fall asleep each night. Most people who try this notice their latency gets shorter by the end of the week, and the process feels more automatic. The power of this approach is that it leans on your body's built-in systems. Novelty tricks might still be fun to try now and then, and they can provide real short-term relaxation, but they're not a substitute for conditioning. Once your cues are set and repeated often enough, they work without extra effort, even after a stressful day. You're not forcing sleep, you're setting up the conditions so that sleep happens on its own, faster, and more reliably. And while some nights will still run late, knowing you can re-engage those cues at the right time keeps those nights from turning into blocks of wakefulness. Over time, the combination of routine, light control, temperature cues, and timing your readiness point becomes the low-maintenance backbone of falling asleep easily. Maintaining it is simpler than restarting from scratch each time your schedule wobbles. And when your nights are anchored this way, you're in a better position to recover when your day energy dips. That moment, often after lunch, when focus drops and your body feels heavier, has its own set of solutions. Nap optimization, how 26 minutes can rescue a wrecked day. When the middle of the day leaves you running below capacity, one of the most reliable recovery tools isn't another task, but a specific form of rest. A short, deliberate nap, timed and capped carefully, can deliver hours of improved focus and performance without undermining your nighttime sleep. NASA and aviation tracking studies have shown that a nap lasting about 26 minutes can lift alertness by more than half and enhance operational performance for the rest of the shift. Later trials in corporate settings have mirrored these results, reporting gains in decision quality and reaction speed after planned short naps. The numbers matter. A 20-30 minute nap hits the sweet spot, long enough to let your brain enter light stages of sleep, where nervous system activity slows and mental fatigue eases, but short enough to avoid drifting into the deeper, slow-wave phases. Wake before those later phases, and you can get up within minutes feeling sharp and ready. Stay down much past half an hour, and you increase the risk of sleep inertia, grogginess and disorientation that can linger and slow you for the next hour. Many people write off napping altogether because of this, when the real problem is overshooting the optimal length. Timing is just as important as length. For most adults, the early to mid-afternoon aligns with a natural dip in alertness and body temperature, making it the optimal zone to add rest without interfering with nighttime sleep pressure. If your nap runs too close to evening, you reduce that natural buildup of pressure, pushing back your ability to fall asleep at your normal bedtime. A practical rule is to finish your nap by around 3 p.m., earlier if you tend to go to bed before 10. Concerns that naps will automatically lead to later bedtimes are usually about timing, consistency, or the underlying reason for the nap. If you're catching up after a short or fragmented night, a well-placed nap can maintain afternoon performance without compromising recovery later, provided the duration and timing are controlled. If your nighttime sleep is solid, a brief early afternoon nap won't necessarily shift your bedtime, as long as it's kept short and well clear of evening hours. The problems come with naps that are long, irregular, or used as a substitute for fixing chronic sleep issues at night. In the studies that tracked both operational crews and office staff, benefits were greatest when naps were planned into the day rather than taken in reaction to extreme fatigue. Pilots, healthcare workers, and other high-stakes roles often schedule naps ahead of extended work or critical tasks, much like refueling before a long trip. Corporate teams trying this approach have seen fewer performance dips later in the day, even during complex meetings and presentations. Planning these naps with a set start and an alarm for the end helps avoid slipping into deeper sleep and keeps the benefits predictable. Perfect conditions aren't required. In research settings, many effective naps happened in lighted rooms or reclining chairs. You can still enter light sleep stages without full darkness or silence, especially once you've practiced relaxing in those settings. If actual sleep doesn't come easily, a period of quiet rest, eyes closed, stimulation minimized, can still lower nervous system load enough to produce measurable, if smaller, improvements in alertness. A variant sometimes used in tightly scheduled environments is the caffeine nap. You drink a modest dose, usually from coffee, immediately before lying down. Because caffeine's alertness-boosting effect typically begins around 20 minutes after consumption, you wake just as it starts working. This pairing can sharpen the recovery effect, but it's best kept for situations where full alertness is required soon after waking, and avoided within 6 hours of bedtime to prevent disruption to nighttime sleep. Knowing your workload and baseline sleep schedule helps decide if and when to nap. Those waking very early, working long split shifts, or losing hours to unavoidable demands can use short naps as a stabilizing tool to spread alertness across the day. In contrast, if you already sleep 7 to 9 hours nightly and don't notice a functional drop in afternoons, adding naps may not improve your output. It might just redistribute when that output peaks. Much of the hesitation around napping comes from cultural framing. In some professional environments, it's still treated as a sign of poor time management or low drive. Yet in operational fields where safety and peak performance are non-negotiable, brief rest breaks are seen as a requirement, not a weakness. The distinction is in structure and intent. A planned, measured nap is a strategic adjustment to maintain output. An unplanned hour-long collapse is a reaction to resource depletion. Used deliberately, a short nap doesn't replace nighttime sleep. It supports performance in the hours ahead and reduces the temptation to overuse stimulants. By aligning length, timing, and intention with your body's rhythm, you recover enough mental capacity to handle late-day demands at closer to your best. For most people, that 26-minute window delivers the best return for minimal time invested. If you want to test the effect for yourself, try a 3-day trial. Choose a consistent early afternoon slot that you can finish before 3 p.m., set an alarm for 26 minutes, and make the environment as calm as is practical. Each afternoon, follow the same pre-nap steps so the process feels consistent. Close the laptop, silence notifications, recline, close your eyes. After each nap, note how your clarity, mood, and reaction speed feel compared to days without one. The pattern often becomes obvious quickly. The right nap, timed well, can give you back several productive hours that might otherwise feel sluggish. This consistency mirrors the logic used in other recovery strategies. Control the variables, keep the structure, and the results are easier to repeat. Once you know the conditions that work for you, naps become a flexible tool you can deploy when schedules demand high performance over longer days or in environments where focus has to be maintained despite fatigue. Used sparingly and strategically, they can help you meet the next block of work with more capacity than you had going in. And while daytime recovery can be scheduled and measured, there are situations where your schedule is shaped by forces you don't control: flights across time zones, overnight shifts, variable rosters. Those conditions bring a different set of challenges for keeping your sleep aligned with when you need to be alert. Travel, shift work, and maintaining sleep consistency. For people whose jobs involve constant movement across time zones or rotating through night and day shifts, irregularity isn't the exception, it's the framework. The challenge comes from the fact that your internal clock runs on cues like light exposure, meal timing, and consistent wake times, not the entries in a work roster or travel itinerary. When those cues shift too far too often, your circadian rhythm drifts out of sync with your required schedule, and the body's systems stop working in full coordination. That misalignment is what's happening during jet lag or the first days on a night shift. In both cases, the signals telling your brain and body what time it is don't match the schedule you need to be on. Reaction times slow, memory recall gets less reliable, and error rates climb. It's not only about feeling tired, it's that core processes like hormone release, digestion, and cognitive performance are no longer aligned, so everything from decision-making to mood regulation takes more effort. In roles that demand speed and precision, that gap can carry real risk. The aim isn't to eliminate misalignment instantly. That's not realistic when you have to shift your schedule by hours in a single day. The goal is to manage the change so your body adapts faster and to protect performance in the period before it is caught up. Research points to 3 main levers you can control: light, meal timing, and a small set of daily constants. Adjusting these deliberately can shorten the period of mismatch. For travel, the first priority is to lock in your wake time to match the destination as soon as possible, even if it means forcing an earlier or later start the first morning. Pair that wake time with bright outdoor light to reinforce it. Light is the strongest cue your circadian system responds to. When traveling east, get that strong light within the first hour of your new morning to bring your body clock forward. When traveling west, delay morning light exposure and place your brightest light in the late afternoon or early evening to nudge the clock later. Meal timing can work alongside those light cues. Eat on the local schedule straight away, even if hunger cues haven't shifted yet, so that digestion and metabolism start to realign with your new waking hours. Your body treats food as a signal for activity, so aligning meals with your target day helps bring other systems into step faster. For night shift workers, the same principles apply but in reverse. Use bright light before starting your shift to boost alertness and make your brain treat it as your biological morning. After finishing, block daylight with sunglasses on the journey home and use blackout curtains to protect your sleep period from external cues that would otherwise signal, "Wake up now." Keeping meals timed to your working day, rather than the clock's day, helps your body stay anchored while the rest of the world is on a different schedule. In both travel and shift work, light control before sleep is as important as light after waking. Too much bright, cool-toned light in the hours before your intended sleep, especially when sleeping at an unusual time, will delay melatonin release and keep you alert longer. That's where dimmer, warmer lighting or blue light filters can help. If you know a big shift is coming, start adapting early. Moving your bedtime and wake time forward or back by 30 to 60 minutes each day for 3 to 4 days beforehand gives your body a head start, so you arrive or start the shift already partway adjusted. Even partial adaptation can reduce the time you spend in low-performance limbo. Other variables can make the adjustment smoother. Stay hydrated, as dehydration can worsen fatigue and concentration loss. And time caffeine to match the morning of your new schedule, avoiding it too close to your planned sleep. That means holding off on coffee until the start of your shift or the new local morning, and cutting it entirely in the hours before your intended bedtime, even if your body still feels off schedule. For people who travel or rotate shifts often, the long-term strategy is less about full adaptation each time and more about reducing the size of the swings. That might mean setting a midpoint schedule somewhere between your extremes so that each change requires less adjustment. It could also mean keeping a fixed wake time and light routine within each block of similar shifts, even on off days, to avoid repeated resets. Daily constants give your system familiar reference points it can use to orient itself. You can standardize parts of your morning routine, stretching, the order of preparing breakfast, exposure to light, or your wind down before sleep, regardless of the actual hour on the clock. These repeated cues help the brain lock onto a pattern and recover faster when other elements are in flux. You can run your own low-effort experiment on your next trip. Pick one constant, like wake time or meal timing, and keep it steady once you land, no matter how strange it feels on day one. If you're a shift worker, choose a small routine you can repeat before each sleep period, even if your sleep starts at odd hours. Track how quickly your alertness stabilizes and whether the adjustment period shortens compared to past changes. Even partial gains, waking a bit sharper on day 2 instead of day 4, can protect decision-making speed, reduce errors, and keep you from relying as heavily on emergency fixes like late caffeine or excess snacking. Consistency, in just a couple of cues, can become the anchor your body uses to find its footing, making the next change in schedule less of a full reset. And while these tactics can minimize the impact of unavoidable schedule changes, there's a more common form of clock disruption that slips under most people's radar. It doesn't require crossing oceans or taking night shifts, and it happens in homes and offices every single week. Weekend sleep swings, the social jet lag trap. It's easy to think of weekends as a pressure valve for recovery. Stay up late because there's no early alarm, sleep in as a reward for getting through the week. But shifting your wake time by a couple of hours from Saturday to Sunday can create the same kind of internal disruption as flying across 2 time zones, minus the plane ticket. The result shows up on Monday morning when your brain and body are still running on the weekend's delayed schedule. Instead of feeling restored, you start the week subdued, slower to focus, and a step behind on simple tasks. That disruption has a name: social jet lag. If you normally wake at 6:30 a.m. for work and push that to 9:00 a.m. on weekends, your circadian cues shift later. Light reaches your eyes later, meals happen later, and activity starts later. For 2 days, your internal clock adapts to that delayed pattern. Then Monday arrives and you force an abrupt return to your weekday wake time. The body treats it like an overnight time zone change without any adjustment period. According to 2025 performance tracking data, even a 1-hour average shift in weekend wake times leads to measurable drops in reaction speed and working memory on Mondays. Swings of 2 hours or more produce performance dips comparable to crossing multiple time zones and trying to work immediately upon arrival. The main fix isn't complicated, but it requires enough consistency to hold your clock steady. Research points to 2 practical options for keeping social jet lag minimal. One is to limit weekend wake time changes to within 30-60 minutes of your weekday wake time. If you rise at 6:30 during the week, aim for no later than 7:30 on days off. This narrower range keeps light, meal, and activity cues aligned closely enough that the Monday shift is small. The other is to keep your wake time the same on weekends and get more rest by extending your sleep at the front end, heading to bed earlier on Friday or Saturday instead of sleeping much later the next morning. That way, your internal clock remains anchored to its weekday pattern, and you still get extra recovery without pushing your schedule forward. The benefit of controlling that shift isn't just about easier mornings. Circadian alignment influences processing speed, focus, mood stability, and even how well you store and recall information. Larger weekend swings make your systems spend part of Monday playing catch-up, raising the energy cost of routine work and leaving less capacity for complex or creative tasks. Keeping the swings small reduces the time you spend in that adaptation zone, which can stabilize both performance and energy levels across the week. For proof, you can run a simple weekend experiment. Maintain your normal weekday wake time for both Saturday and Sunday, but shift extra rest to an earlier bedtime. Pay attention to how you feel on Monday: alertness during the first couple of hours, reaction time on familiar tasks, and concentration in meetings or focused work. The contrast compared to a weekend with a multi-hour sleep-in can make the hidden cost of social jet lag obvious. If a fixed wake time feels too strict right away, start by shortening your usual weekend sleep-in by an hour, then close the gap further over a couple of weeks. Some people find the temptation to sleep in comes from staying up later the night before. That can create a feedback loop: wake later, feel less tired at night, stay up even later, then oversleep again. Breaking that loop is easier when you focus on front-loading recovery. On busy weeks, an earlier night can feel like the least flexible part of your schedule, but it has the highest effect on keeping your rhythm steady. Even consolidating an extra 30-45 minutes of sleep at the start of the night can be enough to remove the next morning's need to sleep in. Light is another key lever. If you do wake later than normal on a weekend, getting bright light exposure soon after waking helps reinforce the start of your day and prevent the drift from extending into the night. Outdoor light is best, but direct light from a window can work if you can't get outside. In the evening, dim lights and reduce bright, cool-toned light from screens in the hour before your intended bedtime to keep sleep signals strong. Both ends of the day's light exposure help your internal clock hold steady. Meal timing works in a similar way. Aim to eat breakfast and lunch within an hour of your weekday times, even if your wake time shifts. Your body reads meal timing as a cue for the day's active phase, so keeping it steady helps counteract some of the delay from sleeping in. Pairing early day meals with lighter physical activity, like walking or stretching, strengthens that day has started message. You don't have to eliminate flexibility from your weekends. Shifting wake time by half an hour to an hour can still give you a sense of relief from the weekday routine while avoiding the full reset your body needs after larger shifts. Small, intentional adjustments, 5 to 10 minutes earlier each week until your weekend and weekday schedules match or nearly match, often go unnoticed in the moment, but remove the drag of Monday adaptation entirely. The bigger point is recognizing that your body reacts to timing changes the same way whether they happen because of a long-haul flight or a long weekend. Controlling the size of those changes lets you start each week closer to full capacity instead of burning Monday just to get back to baseline. You'll feel the gain not only in reduced fog on the first day of the week, but also in steadier focus and energy through midweek, because you're not using extra resources to fight through misalignment. One final step that takes almost no extra time. On weekends, get outside for morning light as close to your wake time as possible, and keep breakfast and lunch within an hour of weekday timing. Those two anchors, light and meals, send strong, consistent cues that stabilize your rhythm and make the Monday transition smoother. When you preserve that stability, you're not just protecting how you feel, you're protecting how you perform. Mondays stop being days lost to recovery and become part of a rhythm that keeps your energy and focus available when you need them most. That shift from reactive to consistent is one of the simplest ways to defend the quality of what you produce, both at the start of the week and all the way through it. Protecting your sleep means protecting how clearly you think and how well you work. Even small, repeated disruptions chip away at focus, memory, and decision quality before you notice it happening. This isn't about perfection or rigid rules. It's about holding a few steady habits that keep your body clock stable and recovery intact. If you want one place to start, try this. For the next 7 days, fix your wake time and move your last caffeine an hour earlier. Track how your mornings feel. If the first night doesn't work, keep going. Lasting change takes repetition. Comment with your chosen experiment, and if you want weekly, practical experiments that actually move the needle, hit subscribe.